Chief Green, can you hear me? Oh, there it is. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All the technical difficulties, hopefully. It is 6:02 p.m. on November 1st, 2022, and I'm calling the Citizens Public Safety Review and Appeal Board meeting to order. We will have at this time the roll call.
Curtis Gardner.
Here.
Luis Garcia. Barbara Miller.
Here.
Christopher Caldwell.
Here.
Ebony Hemphill.
Here.
Vernon Payne.
Here.
Larry Tolbert.
Present.
Susan Stapleton.
Here.
Our upcoming regular meetings will be held on December 13th and January 10th. At this time, we will have the opening of our appeal, PCR 2022-0030. The summary of that appeal will be presented by Ms. Dusick, our liaison to the City Manager's Office.
Mr. Chairman and Board, on May 16th, 2022, Ms. Joanna Babcock filed a PCR complaint with the Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety. The complaint was in response to an arrest that occurred on October 7th, 2021 at 433 Ampersea Avenue in the city of Kalamazoo. Ms. Babcock's complaint alleged that excessive force was used during her arrest, that an officer intentionally braked his vehicle to cause harm to her, and that her charges were improperly changed so she could be lodged at the jail. The complaint was assigned to Inspector Chuck Mason from the Office of Professional Standards for investigation on May 19th, 2022. The investigation was closed on September 8th, 2022. The Chief's Office reviewed the report and exonerated the officer's action in Ms. Babcock's first allegation and found her second and third allegation to be unfounded. Ms. Babcock was notified of the Chief's findings, and she has chosen to appeal the findings to the City Manager. The City Manager has referred this appeal to the Citizens Public Safety Review and Appeals Board and requests a disposition recommendation. This appeal is before you this evening.
Pursuant to the appeal, which is open to the public at the request of Ms. Babcock, I want to review the fact that we will now hear the appeal related to PCR 2022-0030. It is important that all parties recognize and understand that this board has reviewed numerous documents and submissions by both the appellant and by KDPS. There was background information provided, and the board has reviewed that thoroughly. Is there any member of the board who is unable to render an unbiased opinion on this appeal due to a relational, financial, or other conflict of interest? If so, please indicate at this time. We will hear from the appellant and why they disagree with the Chief's determination of the complaint. At the conclusion of the appellant's presentation, board members, and only board members, will have the opportunity to ask the appellant for clarification or additional detail. It is important that all parties recognize and accept that the board will hear information that is germane to the complaint. We ask that there be no extraneous, unrelated information be presented to the board. The focus is on the complaint. After hearing from the appellant, we will hear from the investigators to describe the investigation that was undertaken to form the Chief's finding. At the conclusion of the investigator's presentation, board members will have the opportunity to ask the investigator for clarification or additional information. I want to emphasize that the appellant cannot ask KDPS questions, and KDPS cannot ask the appellant questions. Board members only will be asking questions of the appellant and of KDPS. The appellant has requested that the hearing is open to the public. While the hearing is open to the public, we request that there be no outbursts of any kind. We repeat, no outbursts of any kind. While there will not be an opportunity for public comments during the hearing, all regular citizens' public safety review and appeal board meetings are open to the public and offer an opportunity for public comment on any topic. After hearing from the appellant and the investigator, the board will adjourn and go into closed deliberation, and the public will be excused after the board has left chambers to go into closed deliberations. At the conclusion of its deliberations and within 14 days, business days of the close of the hearing, the board will prepare a written report to be submitted to the city manager with a recommendation to sustain or amend the chief's finding. The city manager shall have final authority to sustain or amend the chief's finding and will notify the appellant of the determination within 20 business days following the appeal hearing. Let me be very clear that this board serves in an advisory review capacity, providing a recommendation to the city manager after its deliberations. We will now hear from the appellant.
Hi, my name is Joanna Babcock. I want to start with a land acknowledgement before I start. So it says, Anin Bozo. This is a description of the indigenous people who lived and migrated through the lands of Kikanamazo, currently known as Kalamazoo, Michigan. Some Bodiwadmi also refer to this area as Gizmize, and both terms refer to the river coming alive like a pot of boiling water that is overflowing. We give acknowledgement to the old ones who lived here before we had documentation and names, the builders of the mounds, one of which still resides at the unseceded Gun Lake Machi Beach Nash Irish Reservation, currently known as Bronson Park. Others are noted to be under rivers in the area around Kikanamazu, as in Comstock. In 1795, Chief Machi B. Nash Iwish, an Ojibwe leader, signed the Treaty of Greenville. This served to establish a reservation where the Three Fires Confederacy of Anishinaabe, known as the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi people, lived and migrated in the Kikanamazu River Valley, with the primary village being at the head of the Kikanamazu River. It is noted that tribes such as the Grand River Odawa and the Saginaw Chippewa would migrate to winter here. In 1821, Chief Machi B. Nashuwish signed the first Treaty of Chicago, and after negotiations with leaders of the tribes, seceded most of the land south of the Grand River, while the Machi B. Nashuwish band retained a 3-square-mile reserve in what is present-day Kikanamazo.
Ms. Babcock, I'm
Yeah.
sorry for interrupting you, but may I ask you a question, please?
Yeah.
What is the connection of your statements here to the appeal that you filed with this city manager's office and the board? Just for information purposes, could you
Yes.
please explain to us how those two things connect? I appreciate it.
Yes, so this whole situation started because of the eviction of houseless people on the unceded land, indigenous land. So I want to give acknowledgement before I start to my indigenous roots, to the migratory lands that were taken from our people, and how we as Southern natives were separated from our Northern brothers. And now I am here on this land advocating for the removal, once again, so I'm going to get to that, how historically indigenous people were removed from this land, and now houseless people are being violently moved from these lands as well.
And so thank you for that. And so your thesis is that because of the background you've shared, you feel that you were, that this is tied to your right to enter into the area where you
Yes.
were arrested. Am I listening to this correctly?
Yes, that is exactly what I'm saying. I'm
And so
saying,
your intent is to lay that foundation for the board's understanding of why you felt you had the right to engage in the behavior that you engaged in. Am I understanding this correctly?
that is correct, sir.
Thank you. You may continue.
Okay, so I'm going to start again here. In 1827, the Treaty of St. Joseph was signed, which forced the Anishinaabe to secede the rest of the Kikanamazo River Reserve, and many moved north to avoid forced removal out west. At the time, there were 4 to 5 consolidated settlements of Anishinaabe who lost their land, including the tribes living in what is now Schoolcraft, River Rouge, River Raisin, and the removal of the reserves of the Natawasepi Huron band who were pushed out near Athens. And it's only like 5 minutes, it's not that much longer. So, yes, okay. In 1830, the Indian Removal Act was enforced, which was to clear the land of Anishinaabe to make room for settler expansion and development. In 1833 was the Second Treaty of Chicago, which touched Kikanamazo by erasing the rest of the Machi-Benash-Irish Reservation, and resulted in the removal of thousands of Anishinaabe, mainly Potawatomi, out west in what is called the Trail of Death. A plaque commemorating this removal from the settler view is located in the train station downtown. Chief Machi-Benash-Irish did not sign this treaty, and those who refused to leave hid and moved in southern Michigama or moved north and to Canada to avoid being removed out west. In 1834, the Indian Reorganization Act was created to provide resources to reestablish tribal governments to increase or somewhere return the Indian sovereignty that was disrupted and violated by the American government. However, the Bureau of Indian Affairs would only recognize one tribe for the Southern Peninsula and chose to recognize the Saginaw Chippewa tribe, which was historically to include the band of Saginaw, Swan Creek, and Black River Ojibwe people. Due to much persistence and volunteering of those who were dedicated to reclaiming sovereignty, the following are the names and dates of the Anishinaabe who reorganized and became federally recognized near their original lands. Pokagon Band of Potawatomi in Dowagiac, Michigan. Natawasepi Huron Band of Potawatomi. Gun Lake Machi-Benash-Irish Tribe of Potawatomi of Bradley, Michigan. Kikanamazu continues to be a place of migration and settling for Anishinaabe as well as other diverse indigenous identities. This acknowledgement serves to share the story of the history of where we lived, how we were forced to move or be removed against our will, and how we continue to reside near our ancestral lands as both recognized and unrecognized people indigenous to Turtle Island. May we continue to ponder how the use of this land respects, acknowledges, and returns sovereignty to its original caretakers. Chi Michwa Aho. This was prepared by Monica Washington Padula, Afro-Indigenous citizen with documented and family stories connecting to the historic Saginaw Band Ojibwe, Odawa, Blackfoot, Choctaw peoples. Drop the charges. Contributed by the accounts by Linda Cyprick Kilborn, Rebecca Roop, Frank Barker, and federally recognized Kikanamazu area tribal websites. So here I start my appeal. 7 October 22 police brutality appeal. 10 City Ampersand Hotel Houses eviction. So it's a small background about what was going on in those times. It's only a couple slides. On October 6, 10 City Houses camp was evicted with no prior notice. Early in the morning, people were given 5 minutes in a sleepy haze to gather their belongings. KDPS officers violated Houses people's constitutional rights, allegedly at gunpoint being punched, kicked, yelled at, and intimidated. They were pushed to the open field in front of the camp labeled Ampersand North. October 7, 2021, I arrived at the camp with practice about 11 a.m. A Houses community member came up to me to ask me if I would advocate for a distraught mother who had left her baby's memorial inside the camp. She handed me a megaphone. I tried to talk with Officer Michael Miller. He conveniently left this out of his report, actually kind of twisted it, where he said that I came in after certain people, but I was the one that approached him first to try to reason. I asked him if he was a parent, if he had ever lost a child. I reminded him about the OIR report, which says he should take a step back and assess the situation. This is the part of the OIR report which I was referencing, and it says, unfortunately, it seems that KDPS had committed to the imposition of a police zone during the Proud Boys March in Kalamazoo 2020. Police dispersal orders and felt it could not step back and reassess the need for continued enforcement. What was needed in the OIR group view was the ability to pause and consider the broader implications of the continued police action with an understanding of the needs of the Kalamazoo community, because there were many participants and observers who believed that the enforcement strategies constituted an overreaction. Excuse me. So PSO Michael Miller ignores me. He left me standing alone inside the police tape and went back to his patrol car. I decided to ask other officers that were inside the camp for help using the megaphone. Also, you will see in all the videos the conditions of the field. I began getting stuck in the mud, so I darted out of the mud towards the other group of officers. I had a split second to realize that Michael Miller was about to tackle me, not ask me to put my hands behind my back, not try to take my megaphone, not give me the opportunity to comply, just a violent tackle. So this is a video, the next video. I just want to put a trigger warning for people at home. So the next video is the arrest. There should be a video playing. I think I have to go back to the other slide. There you go. Yeah, it's okay.
Ms. Babcock, is this a technical difficulty that you're having, or is it due to the equipment that we have?
Yeah, the equipment. I'm having another and then I could play those once. I have another computer I can play this from that's coming soon, so you right there? Yeah. Sorry, just bear with me.
Thank you.
a sec, yeah. No, I'm just gonna go on my drive and, it should connect. She had used it before. No, it doesn't. Yeah. Yeah, let me, okay, I'm gonna send you the longer video. I'm gonna send the longer video and then you could just play the, okay, let me see what I'm gonna do. There's a lot of videos. It's not gonna play on there. Yeah,
Ms. Fergus, would you recommend a pause here as we solve this technical issue? Okay. Let's take, what do you need, 5, 10 minutes? 5 minutes. Let's take a 5-minute recess.
okay, let me see. Yeah, well, she can't use it because they only have like the small. So now we have to figure out how to play.
That's all. Let's go. Hello? Ms. Babcock?
Yeah.
If you cannot pull up the video of the actual arrest, I have requested that KDPS provide us with that video as a part of their presentation, and they have agreed to do that.
Okay.
So we will see that. Is that acceptable to you?
That's okay.
Thank you. So we can move on to the next part of your presentation, I would assume. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I found them, but well, at least you can hear me there calling the officers. Okay, let me. Okay. Okay, I did send you some other videos. I'm gonna send you so that they could be played separately, I guess.
Excuse me. Yes, ma'am.
This, I guess, the slow motion video of the arrest.
That will be approximately 9 minutes, is that?
No, not this one. Yeah. This is just a arrest. Just showing his intentions to just take me down and not to try and give me the opportunity to comply. Well, there was no command. And so here you can see he's on top of me and he has both my hands and I'm no longer resisting and I'm frozen and he takes my whole body. So he has complete control over me. There's no fighting. There's no struggle. I am powerless under him. He is 6 foot tall and I'm only 4'10", 4'11", so yeah. Okay, here is the whole video of when he starts running. Oh, I guess, this one should be on loud, because this is where you can hear me calling the other officers. Okay. So I'm calling the other officers in that video. We can continue where I left off. next as well. Okay. So Inspector Chuck Mason's findings on excessive force. His findings said, you allege that PSO Miller used excessive force against you during your arrest based on the fact that you fled on foot from PSO Miller, ignored his lawful order to stop, and attempted to use your bullhorn to block Miller. So I had a clip where you can see the bullhorn. It passes so fast in between us that it actually, the manner that Officer Michael Miller carried out the arrest was absolutely violent and unreasonable. Next slide. KDPS use of force policy 300, section 300.3, section 1, factors used to determine the reasonableness of force. Next slide. KDPS use of force policy 300, section 300.3.1, when determining whether to apply force and evaluating whether a public safety officer has used reasonable force, a number of factors should be taken into consideration as time and circumstances permit. These factors include, but are not limited to, A, immediate and severity of the threat to public safety officers and others, the conduct of the individual being confronted as reasonably perceived by the public safety officer at the time. Public safety, next slide. Public safety officers, okay, so, public safety officers subject factors, age, size, relative strength. So these are basically a lot of things that we can check off. I know you guys can't see Officer Michael Miller, but he is a man that is over 6 foot tall. I want to say like over 200 pounds. And I am a small woman. I'm 4'10", 4'11", arguably. I don't have any strength over him. I don't have any skill level. I don't have any like fighting skills. Nobody was sustaining injuries due to me. There was no level of exhaustion or fatigue. The number of public safety officers available versus me was about maybe 8 to 1. Seriousness of the subject's offenses or reason for contact with the individual. So there was a white male, which I'm going to talk about in a later slide, that also was arrested that day, and he got a citation. So we know from based on that arrest that my arrest should have just been a citation. Potential injury to PSO and others, the apparent need for immediate control of the individual. And so yeah, I just put I should not be doing the inspector's job, because this is like the first thing that he should have looked at when he was doing his findings is the use of force and gone off and checked off every box. I'm surprised that they don't have all these and like, okay, what are the circumstances? But I guess not. And so then the next slide, I put in some of the quotes from the Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety Policy 300 use of force. Expect to use these guidelines to make a decision in a professional, impartial, and reasonable manner. I don't believe that was reasonable. Vesting PSO with the authority to use reasonable force and to protect the public welfare requires monitoring, evaluation, and a careful balancing of interests, which was not at all done. The objective is to resolve the situation using a control of a compliance technique that will be effective and has the last potential for injury to officers and subjects. Officers are not required to choose the least intrusive control method, only a reasonable one. I have ulnar neuritis in my elbow. I'm still trying to figure out what's wrong with my wrist due to this violent attack. And it says, fair, cool-headed officer behavior can significantly reduce danger and de-escalate a situation, whereas arrogant, insensitive officer behavior invites hostility and danger, and it can escalate a situation. And that is what Officer Michael Miller did. He forced me into a fight or fight mode, and I froze. I froze under him, and under the two officers that were on top of me. Next slide. There's no excuse for police brutality continued. Furthermore, Officer Michael Miller violated the 4th, 14th, and 8th Amendments by using excessive force. Attacking me and now allowing me to breathe and then being rude about it is cruel and unusual punishment. And I hope that the KDPS left that in there. It is apparent that Inspector Chuck Mason did not do his due diligence, that he's a white supremacist who is in a leadership position to make excuses for police brutality and dishonest police behavior, point blank. This is why strides towards equity are violent. Next slide. Did Inspector Chuck Mason read the OIR report, or is he the one who chafed at the criticism? And it says, in today's climate, particularly in the context of crowd management situations, I could cite October 8th, mass arrest as well, and my arrest. Law enforcement should think more critically about the need to make and enforce commands. If there's no exigency, no real reason to rush to make a stage, perhaps a different approach is warranted. A different approach was warranted here. Even though the department often has technical justifications and unreasonable explanations for its actions, it does not mean that its exercise of discretion is best attuned to community sensibilities or the prevailing circumstances. So I really do not find the inspector's findings at all reasonable, And I wish I could play my videos, but anyway, next slide. Inspector Chuck Mason's findings. Attempted to use your bullhorn. As I stated before, I have video where the bullhorn moves away in a split second before Officer Miller tackles me. For the inspector to make up an excuse for this act of violence is a red flag and speaks to what the Office of Professional Standards is really about, making excuses for the policing problem, because this was not, as I stated before, was not in the police report. And it also creates this narrative of the reason why he had to tackle me or why he made that decision. No, he made that decision even before he entered the camp. He went in there running to tackle me. There's no narrative here that I did anything to deserve this, because I did not. He did not take a step back. He ran to tackle me. And that is the narrative that is the truth. Next slide. Okay, so I don't know if you're gonna be able to play that, but that's the, I had to slow it down twice so you can see how fast the bullhorn passes in front of us. So I just turn around and fling my arm this way. So that is how fast that bullhorn. It was never used as a weapon. It was never used to prevent an arrest at all. That is not the narrative that we are having here, because that is the narrative that the inspector laid down when he gave me the findings of why he exonerated Michael Miller. Next slide. Says, after you were handcuffed, you continued to resist by pulling and twisting your body away from them. PSO Kendall had to step in to assist PSO Miller in walking you out of the encampment because of your attempts to pull away. Your actions continued once you reached the parking area. In this next clip, which I did email to you, which is the longer video of me being escorted out of the camp, you'll hear the real reason why PSO Kendall is called to assist. I had to I didn't cut the part. I edited that part out because my breasts were exposed. This situation is twisted by the inspector to further make excuses for police brutality. So once again, we have this narrative again of me resisting, when in reality, the female officer had to come and lift up my shirt because my breasts were exposed, and none of the male officers were gonna touch my shirt. And so I put, please do not confuse this situation, Inspector. I am absolutely in my right to continue to exercise my First Amendment right, including but not limited to curse words. I am allowed by the First Amendment right to curse at officers, which I will use freely against these pigs, because they can assault people and traumatize them with impunity. Okay, so will you play? I emailed you this. Oh, okay. You can see me here. I am still talking to the officers, trying to advocate for the memorial. If you watch me with the officers, you can see that I am not at all resisting while they're escorting me out of the camp. This is what I show. Here in this part, I did tell him I did not want to go with him, that he was going to hurt me. If I told the female officer that if she let him take me, that he was going to hurt me, and that's what he did. I just want to add as well that during this, when this happened, I was also pregnant. I was family planning. So yeah, that was very hard to find out. So here I am being escorted out. I want to note the other is the male that also went into the camp. I have not resisted at all. She's checking my pockets, and I'm just standing there still advocating for this memorial. Oh, I guess it was only 3 minutes. I also had another video of the part where I couldn't breathe. At one point, there was 2 officers who put their knees on my back unnecessarily, and when I said I couldn't breathe, Officer Michael Miller said, "Knock it off." He's like, "Oh, knock it off." He didn't believe that I couldn't breathe, and that was very shocking. Okay, so this is the video we just showed where I'm handcuffed walking out of the encampment towards Sherman Drive I have not resisted this whole time. Then the next video is about me. If you want to go to the next slide, it's the video of me not being able to breathe, but hopefully they'll show that. You can skip that too. So PSO Miller, Michael Miller injured my elbow and wrist. So it says right here, PSO Miller is observed on video restraining you under your arm, which is a common and acceptable way for officers to maintain control of resisted person. PSO Miller use of force was appropriate for your level of resistance against him and to prevent attempts at escape. Once again, we see Inspector Chuck Mason's attempt to draw from narratives he has made up to excuse PSO Michael Miller. There was overall compliance from my part and no visible attempts at escape. There is, however, video proof that PSO Michael Miller ignores me when I'm yelling that he is hurting me. He is aware that he is hurting me and still proceeds to pull up my elbow while taking me to the vehicle, and then lies to make excuses. I also have that video. Let me just pull it up because I could send it real quick. I guess not. So I had a video where I had slow down, him when so it happened so fast because he's standing there holding the patrol car while he's ignoring my pleas that he's hurting me, and you could see him using just the strength of his upper arm is enough to make me lose my balance because he's pulling me up. And so I had a video that I had slowed down where you could see instances of him going like this, pulling up his arm. And so when somebody is over 6 feet and I'm under 5 feet, you know what that does? It looks like I'm falling forward, like I'm moving, but he is holding onto the patrol car, ignoring my pleas, jerking me up. And so I had a video where you could see his arm go up, and you could also see he makes an excuse. He says that I'm holding his shirt, but I have a picture. Oh, well, let me not get ahead of myself. Maybe I put that in there. Okay, you could go to the next slide. Okay, so this is the video where he is hurting me, and I'm telling him that he is hurting me, which maybe I don't think it's gonna play. Yeah, you can go to the next slides. Yeah, so you can see my hands right there are away from him. I have no way of touching the officer. I have no way of holding him. I have no way of touching him at all. There are my hands. You could keep going. And this is the video where he lies and he says that I was holding his shirt. Impossible. So that's blatant disrespect and lies. And so the last picture you will see is how far those handcuffs went on my wrist. Where they're supposed to be is where my bracelet is for reference, and how he was pulling me up is what you can see there. And so, again, next slide, the use of force policy 300.2.1 duty to intercede. Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety. Any public safety officer present and observing another public safety officer using force that is clearly beyond that which is objectively reasonable under the circumstances shall, when in position to do so, intercede to prevent the use of unreasonable force. A public safety officer who observes another employee use force that exceeds the degree of force permitted by law should promptly report these observations to a supervisor. In the videos, I was also, calling out to other officers, letting them know that he was hurting me. The whole time that he was escorting me to the patrol car, because he was pulling me up from my arm, I was screaming, he's hurting me, he's hurting me. None of the officers around did anything to intercede that, even though they could clearly see what he was doing to me. Okay, the next part of my presentation is the disparities that happened between me and the white male who went into the camp. You know, the statistics will say white privilege, but I know KDPS will say it's just a coincidence. Next slide. As I sat in the patrol car, I noticed that a white male who had entered the camp as well was not treated the same as me. He was not tackled, only placed in handcuffs. And this is the video of him getting arrested, and the officer telling him numerous times to put his hands behind his back, to put his hands behind his back, to put his hands behind his back. A courtesy that I did not receive. The next video that I was gonna play is of the officers checking on his handcuffs, asking him if his handcuffs are okay, if they're comfortable, that he can go in the patrol car and he can put his feet up and get comfortable inside there because he's gonna be out of there quick with the citation. And so you can go through those videos. I also show a video where he's allowed to smoke a cigarette while in cuffs. He's handcuffed. So here you can, what you can see right here shows up as a video. He's handcuffed and he's smoking a cigarette. The next video is the officer's talking about charges. He's gonna get cited, I'm gonna get sent to jail. In this video, she's telling him, you know, if you comply, we're gonna give you the citation, you're gonna get out of here, you're gonna have a good day, you know, just hang in there, hang tight. The next video is of her explaining the citation to him. Before she went to explain the citation, another officer, Officer Gurnett, which I'm going to get to in a sec, he had asked her to come and pull up my shirt because my shirt was down once again. It took her 4 minutes to come and pull up my shirt. She went and gave him a citation, finished up her citation first, did everything she had to do, let him go, and then came and pulled up my shirt. So I was there with my breast exposed again for the second time. This is another person that they let into the camp as well. When after I got out of the hospital, so 2 days after I was released, I ran into Sarah Gerstner, a volunteer who works with Animals Best Friend Fund, according to MLive. She asked what had happened. I explained, and she said her exact words were, "Oh, they let me in. They let me retrieve belongings." I was furious that day. I was livid. My hand was in a cast that day when I was talking to her, and she said that they let her in. And so, the next slide that I put, I'm not going to read. It's just something that Sarah Gerstner has done in the houseless community that does not make her a good person. But even after people knew that she did the next, you could put it so people could read it while I am talking, because I'm not going to get into it. But she is not a person that the houseless community trusts, and yet KDPS trusted her because she had a houseless woman's dog euthanized without her permission. You don't mess with people's pets, and you don't mess with people's kids. That's the two things. And this is the kind of people that KDPS was letting in instead of human rights activists, stewards of the land. So that's that. So this is a quote. The next slide is a quote from the OIR report, which states, "We evaluate how the conduct and outcomes of these incidents certainly contributed to the very real perception that KDPS officers treat those who support the protest movements against police violence and racial injustice differently than those who express wholehearted support for law enforcement." This is the reason why I got tackled. This is the reason, because this is like, I'm going to give you all a flash drive, which has an essay that I wrote comparing the OIR report to the Ampersand evictions. And you will see that all the things which the OIR report, the reason why the OIR group came to Kalamazoo was the same reasons that we see in the Ampersand evictions. The violence that ensued October 6th, October 7th, and October 8th with the mass arrests. And so the next section is on my side. As an Indigenous person, here are some racist coincidences. Here's the treatment that I received. So in this video, which I found humorous, because I guess I had to find something to laugh about in here, is that she didn't believe my name was Joanna Babcock. She said, "I'm going to give you one more opportunity to tell me your real name." And she's not the first person that has done that. This is why I know it's racist, because she's not the first person that has looked at me and said, "Really, your name is Joanna Babcock?" Yes. Yes, it is. The next slide is, I'm telling her, in this slide, I'm telling her, hey, he hurt me. He was pulling me up. He had no reason to do that. He was injuring me, and she says, "It's because you were resisting." That whole time, she was checking my pockets. That whole time I was standing there, I was not resisting. As you could clearly see, that they had no issue doing anything or even talking to me or anything. I gave them the information they needed. I was compliant, but still advocating, and that is my right to do. It takes her over 4 minutes to pull up my shirt because she was giving him a citation, sending him on his way, asking him if he had any questions, and outlining the citation that he received for the same things that I was arrested for. Okay, and so here she's telling so this is Gurnett, and Officer Kendall is telling the paramedics and Officer Gurnett that I am not going to receive a citation or go into the ambulance, that I'm going to jail, point blank. Okay, so here I get onto the complaint about PSO Matthew Gurnett. So the inspector says, "In your complaint letter, you wrote that PSO Gurnett proceeded to slam me in the patrol car when the cruiser left Bronson Hospital. It is clear that PSO Gurnett had to make an evasive maneuver." I put blah, blah, blah because honestly, it's a lie. "The allegation was closed, unfounded, which means that the alleged act did not occur. I do not have the dash cams of the circumstances or even how hard he slammed me like KDPS has to. but I know that PSO Matthew Granat is problematic in the community and that he has shown great bias and disrespect to sacred objects. This board has found the actions of PSO Matthew Granat to be problematic when he cut Monica Washington Padula's medicine bag off her body with no respect. There's a red flag. His actions towards me should be judged accordingly. And so this I took from a part of the OIR report which I added. So PSO Granat's behavior is a clear example of a larger issue within the department. The OIR report states this was many people's experience when interacting with KDPS officers, a certain insularity, which means ignorance of or lack of interest in cultures, ideas, or peoples outside one's own experience. And so in this next video, I was going to show the clip where he rudely rips the bag off of Monica Washington Padula, which was like a 15-second video. So there she is standing, and he is the one that triggered her and pulled that bag off her body. Just before another officer was saying to her, this is sacred to you, this means something to you, right? As soon as he finished saying that, he yanked that bag off of her and triggered her. Okay, so the next thing is the misdemeanor charges changed to felonies. So the finding was, your complaint letter states that PSO Granat consulted with other officers to change your charges to felonies so you could be lodged at the jail, according to arrest and incarceration protocol issued on October 6, 2021, the day prior to your arrest, so conveniently. Resisting and obstructing is listed as a crime of violence for which the jail should accept arrest. The intake deputy appears to be unfamiliar with the specifics of the protocol. So in the next video I had was the only interaction I had between the officer Granat and the intake office deputy, which she says, well, I don't know about today, but yesterday we were not taking people in for this crime. And he says, the lieutenant approved it. So she's like, I don't know, I'm going to go ask. And after this, Granat turns off his camera, which I don't think he should have done. But next slide. So PSO Granat should not have turned off his camera because this becomes a he said, she said situation because of his actions. PSO Granat exits the building while on the phone and comes back in to say that he made a mistake on the case number and that it was actually a felony. Those were his words. These are not words that I'm making up. These were the words that Officer Granat said when he came in and my charges were different all of a sudden. For something that a white man got a citation for, this is what was happening to me. Apparently, Officer Granat was not aware of the protocol either. If these officers so there was a plan that we got when we FOIA'd all this information, okay? And every single officer had a duty on that roster, then why weren't they not communicated this arrest protocol? Why did he not know, hey, the protocol changed. Here's the protocol, you could book her. No, he said that those charges had changed. And also they were, conveniently, it was the day before the sweep. Like, how does that make sense? But okay, next slide. So why did he drag so this is what I was saying, right? Why did he tell the intake deputy? Why would they ignore COVID protocols and do a census thing like this during the time of COVID chaos, death, and hardships? I mean, we were in the eye of COVID, and apparently they were allowing people to stay in jails, which is a super spreader. And we know already the houseless community is already vulnerable enough to COVID and no access to medical care, that this is something so senseless done by KDPS, especially since nobody knew about the sweep. So the next slide is an allegation that was not addressed, that was ignored for some reason. So Officer Matthew Granat escorted me to Bronson Hospital, and his behavior towards me made me very uncomfortable. I had to ask him not to touch me since I was complying. I felt as though he invaded my space for no reason numerous times. After I was discharged from the hospital with a cast on my wrist, I was already in the patrol car when Granat asked me if I wanted my seatbelt on. I was clearly very uncomfortable and irritated with this because he was extremely close to me once again. I saw the irritation in his face before he closed the patrol car door, and then I was slammed. And this is right when he left the Bronson, he slammed me in the patrol car. So that was an allegation that was not, and I was very disturbed by that for a long time. aside from being tackled, I also was made to feel very uncomfortable. And I think that's something that only women can understand. The inspector, not being a woman, cannot understand how, we feel with gender violence, especially because this also has to do with gendered violence. And so it is very telling, next slide. It is very telling that this allegation was not addressed, considering that the chief, Vernon Coakley, is on paid administrative leave for harassment. It really speaks to toxic culture within the department. And I really told, and I want to be very impressionable about this, because this was very impressionable to me. And I told when I was facing charges, my charges were dropped. Conveniently, they were dropped the next day, right on time for me to show up to embassy and get my stuff, and probably try to get me. I left that day. The day I was let go, I didn't stay. But I told the Kalamazoo defender, I said, I felt like if he was not wearing a body cam, that the outcome to that would have been very different. That something would have happened to me, because that is the impression I got for like 2 or 3 months. I could not shake that feeling that if he was not wearing a body cam, that something else would have happened to me. I just want to leave that thought with y'all, because that's the impression that I had. That's the trauma that I experienced that day. So the next slide is, I put a few quotes from the OI report. It says, we do not have the sense that KDPS itself has committed to an introspective review that might produce some of these same observations, weighing of alternatives and learning opportunities. We encourage it to do so. I want to make this clear, because these quotes are very telling of why we have policing issues and why this is a concern in our community. And the OI report group had to come in and tell us these things, because KDPS was unable to do any self-reflection, was unable to hold themselves accountable. KDPS failed to do any rigorous internal review or any outward-facing engagement, which according to the OI report means willingness to share information, acknowledge problems, and maintain receptivity to community priorities. That is very concerning. That is part of the OI report. Says, the Office of Professional Standards understands you may be frustrated with the outcome of this incident, but rest assured, KDPS and the Office of Professional Standards take officer conduct seriously, and the completeness and thoroughness of the investigation reflect our dedication to ensuring the city is protected by fair and professional standards. Going back to this, I'm going to talk about this. So I had mentally prepared for the moment that I got that letter where the inspector was going to exonerate the police officers. I was already waiting for that. But this quote is what made me the angriest. I was prepared. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to be angry. I was going to go on by my day and submit my appeal and do the process. But this quote pissed me off, because this was not a thorough. As I've shown you, he did not do his due diligence. He went and took my trauma and twisted it in his report to say that I was trying to flee, to say that that PSO Kendall had to come and get me when she had to pull up my shirt. All these little things that he added, that not only did he not do his due diligence, but he twisted the whole situation around. This pissed me off. This made me mad the whole day. This ruined my day. This quote, not even the exoneration, because I was expecting that. Next slide. So I want to add here the protest communication from Jim Ritzema and the commission. From Jim Ritzema, city manager, who is responsible, excuse me. Jim Ritzema, city manager, who is responsible for ultimately sustaining or not my complaints. So far, none of the complaints this year have been sustained. And he says, as city manager, I am committed to ensuring Kalamazoo is a welcoming community that celebrates the diversity of our residents. I put with money in quotes. A thorough review of our response to the March protest 2020 shows several areas for improvement, and the following preliminary subcommittee report is an important first step that will help us proactively plan our response to future public protests, demonstrations, and rallies. Our goal is to learn from this incident and create a better Kalamazoo for residents, families, visitors, whatever. And it says the city of Kalamazoo is committed to transparency, accountability, because it leads to continuous improvement, allowing us to learn from our experiences to provide a more welcoming and inclusive environment for all Kalamazoo residents and visitors. Excuse me. and visitors. We will be providing regular updates to ensure we remain transparent, accountable, and keep the public and community partners and the media updated and informed. And I put that quote again. The OIR group says, we do not have the sense that KDPS itself has committed to an introspective review that might produce some of the same observations, weighing of alternatives, and learning opportunities. We encourage it to do so. Where is the accountability for October 6th, 7th, and 8th? Where are the updates? Any lessons learned? KDPS has also failed to do any rigorous internal review of any outward-facing engagement again. So the OIR report has to mean something if we want to get to the root cause of police brutality in Kalamazoo. And so I want to add a part of the subcommittee report. You could, next slide. Defining success for protest demonstrations and rallies, identifying key issues and possible solutions and improvement. This was done August 17, 2020. It was a business meeting which appointed Vice Mayor Griffith, Commissioner Cunningham, Commissioner Prado, City Manager Jim Ritzema, City Attorney Clyde Robinson, Deputy City Manager Jeff Chamberlain, Deputy City Manager Laura Lamb, Director Bonner, and Chief Thomas, Assistant Chief Coakley, and Assistant Chief David Boysen. And so the next slide says, defining success guiding principles, policy 430. KDPS policy 430, First Amendment assemblies. It indicates that KDPS respects the rights of people to peaceably assemble. It is the policy of KDPS not to unreasonably interfere, harass, intimidate, or discriminate against a person engaged in the lawful exercise of their rights, while also preserving the peace, protecting life, and preventing destruction of property. Did they succeed? And so here we're going to define success. We're going to see if they succeeded on October 6th and 7th and 8th. I'm going to add just put it all together. When asking to define success, subcommittee members identified the following. Safety, to ensure the community is safe during events and could go home safe. I did not go home safe. A lot of people did not go home safe. Proactively prevent violent confrontations and escalations. That was not done. There was a violent confrontation and escalation all days. Avoid disproportionate use of force and limit the use of chemical agents only when necessary. So there was disproportionate use of force in my situation, and then there was chemical agents used October 8th. I digress. Community relationships. All people are treated with respect and dignity. I was not treated with respect and dignity at all. Better success in communication before, during, and after between KDPS city admin, City Commission. The City Commission did not know that the surprise sweep was happening October 6th. They were not aware. A lot of people were not aware. KDPS and the COC throwing the ball around, who was responsible for that? I don't know, but it happened. Okay, so event organizers and the public, KDPS presence is there to protect the right to peaceful protests. Far, far from it. Next slide. Equitable approach, policy, protocol, rules are content neutral and apply equitably to everyone, not with these racist cops. Ensure there is an equitable approach to enforcement, not at all. Laws are being upheld, establish a measure and proactive to ensure clear, objective accountability of policies and protocols. Okay, and so this is a quote from the OI report. It says, though there was ample presentation of both supporters and detractors of KDPS, and though these individuals had distinctive backgrounds, they shared the view that KDPS had fallen short in one or more ways last summer in spite of having many strengths. KDPS has significantly exacerbated any shortcomings through a combination of defensiveness, tone deaf, and seeming indignation. To them, it was KDPS' poor communication and unwillingness to engage with criticism that ended up leaving a worse impression than any qualms they had about the original enforcement. This is why I don't trust that I'm going to get a fair appeal or a fair hearing, because this just proves that they are unable to see themselves, to hold themselves accountable. The next slide says, based on the lack of evidence, we would relate to some of the concerns expressed above. We found ourselves surprised by the consistency and vigor which KDPS defended its actions, and by the seeming absence of robust self-assessment in the aftermath of such high-profile events. Neither of these dynamics is consistent with best practice. It would behoove the department to both hear and listen to feedback and work towards better dynamics of communication and coordination with stakeholders in the planning, execution, and aftermath of significant crowd management responses. And so here you see, I'm going to put a little bit of some discrepancies from my arrest. Here, PSO Kendall mutes her mic. When one of the officers that had his knee on my back comes up to her and says, come here, signals her, She mutes. She mutes for a few seconds and then unmutes. That's not transparency. I don't know what they were saying or what was going on, but that was suspicious. Here I'm talking, the next slide, I'm talking to John Resegi, one of the people in charge that was complaining to him about the injury that I had sustained. And so at first, you know, when I was in shock, so I was just like, this is what hurts. I'm not there trying to be like, you know, like, I'm in shock. And so when I say, oh, my arm hurts, and I tell him my elbow, he's like, well, which is it? Like, which one is it? I'm like, he just tackled me to my left. Like, everything on my left hurts now. So here, I just want to add this because he acknowledges that what they're doing is wrong. Like, Gernat says, what's the point of fighting over a muddy field? And he's like, everything they own is in there, so I get it. Okay, so you guys do with that. So last thoughts about this is I want to say that for everybody here, this is what the OR report says. Our experience is that the general public does not expect perfection from the police. Its confidence, however, does depend in part on a sense that police are going to be both accountable and determined to make appropriate adjustments when lapse arises. This was a lapse, a huge lapse. This is for the next slide. This is for Jim Ritzma, David Boyson, Victor Green, Laura Lamb, Jeff Chamberlain, and all of leadership. A department that is willing to say that we could have done better in this or that area will be better able to retain credibility and trust from its community. A police agency that is willing to accept criticism and admit fallibility is better suited to learn and improve from difficult challenges. I recommend KDPS do that. And I'm just going to say that I'm glad I didn't have to watch the videos because that was one of the hardest things. Before I end, I'm done. I want to say that one of the hardest things for me to do was to go and rewatch all those videos and make all these edits because I'm like, for what? Jim Ritzema ultimately has the say in what is going to happen here, and I know that he is not on my side. It is very clear from the letter that I received from the Office of Professional Standards that their intention was to manipulate my situation into making me look bad. Okay, I was angry that day. I was angry because people should not be treated like this. There's human rights for a reason, constitutional rights for a reason. I had a right to be angry. I had a right to curse the officers. I had a right to use my words to empower myself. And that should not have been the reason why I was tackled this way. I'm a mother. I have 2 kids. I was pregnant at the time. I was family planning my 3rd child. And when I found out, that could have been my memorial. That's what I think about sometimes. When I found out I was pregnant, I was at the hospital in the middle of a mental breakdown because I could not stand the pain in my elbow. Have you ever bumped your elbow maybe like 3 or 4 times consecutively? When you bump your elbow, you can't stand it. Imagine feeling that sensation for a whole day. I was near suicidal. I was suicidal that day. I could not stand the pain. I could not function because of that pain. And they had to go and do some heart tests because my heart was not beating properly. And so they had to put me through this machine. They said, we have to do a pregnancy test. Could you be pregnant? I said, well, maybe. They did the pregnancy test. I was pregnant. That is how I found out that I was going to have my 3rd child. That is what I had to go through. Face charges. Okay, for speaking out against an injustice. That is all. Thank you.
Ms. Babcock, thank you. Thank you for the work that you put into the presentation. And now we'll ask if the board has any questions to ask board members.
Just wanted to know, were all of the videos working when you left home and
Yes.
brought them here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were.
Okay.
Yeah.
On that same question, were you offered the opportunity to arrive early to test your videos prior to the hearing? And
Yes. Mm-hmm.
did you take advantage of that offer to test your videos before the hearing?
I did not, because somebody who had presented before me was able to use their computer with, I guess there was an adapter here at one point that she was able to use, which I thought that I could use for my computer, which is no longer here. So that is why I wasn't able to present it from my computer so that I could play my videos.
But the person who had the computer that worked is not on the staff, on the city staff?
Oh, no, no.
Any other questions? If I understood correctly, one of your predicates is that you received disparate treatment because of race, and you made reference to race several times. And so you are feeling that because of race, these events transpired.
Yes, I'm comparing my arrest to the rest of the mail, and I wish I could have shown you the videos because that puts everything into perspective. While I'm advocating that I'm injured, she tells me, well, you shouldn't have resisted, you were resisting. And then she tells him, hey, get comfortable in the car. Are your cuffs comfortable? The way that that the female officer and everybody is treating this male activist is very disproportionate to the way that I was being treated, that I was being ignored.
And so those comments, and you can join those comments with portions of the OIR report. And my assumption is, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is that you were using what is characterized as a racist culture and climate in KDPS as a reason for you to have these charges erroneously made against you. Am I assuming that correctly?
Yes, yes you are, because on top of me getting trumped up charges, my charges were dropped the next day, and then a week later I got a call from the court that I had to pay a bail for new charges, unrelated charges. They gave me a fighting charge, which I had to post bail for a week after that I was let go. They gave me so I paid a $500 bond on that, and I was out there not knowing that they could have picked me up and taken me to jail. And people were like suggesting that I go turn myself in early so that I could be out the next day and all these things. So yeah, it was very disproportionate.
Yeah, I simply wanted to be clear in terms of the connections that I was sensing, and put that out there and be transparent about that, because someone may think that you were not providing information that was germane to your appeal. So I wanted to make sure I was understanding exactly
Yes, that was another argument that I had made, yes.
that you were trying to make. Thank you so much. Any question?
I have a question. What is the memorial that you spoke of?
So inside the camp, at the very back of the camp, there was a memorial set up. There was an American flag staged right there, and there was a baby's memorial. A mother had lost her child and had set up the memorial at the camp. And so she hadn't been there since October 6th was a surprise eviction that nobody knew about. She was not there that day for the eviction. So she not only did not get any of her things, she didn't get this memorial back of her child.
I have a question. So they never gave you any warning?
No, sir. No warning. No, sir. Because so what they're going to allege is that, I'm going to tell you the truth because I'm not facing charges anymore. I walked up to him inside the police tape, and I was reasoning with him. He left me standing there. To me, that's like giving me permission to stay there, because he went into his patrol car. So I went to the other officers, and that's the video that I want to show, me saying, hey, officers, hey, using the bullhorn to do that. And so I'm very far away from him, and he is like very lightly. And I want to show a video, too, where my friend is in proximity to him, and you can't hear, where he's like, I'm going to whatever he says. And nope, he just immediately takes off running, tackles me. He didn't say, put your hands behind your back. Nothing. Nothing to me. He gave no opportunity.
I have one question regarding, and you spoke to this as well, being slammed into the patrol car. So that was when you were leaving the hospital and being placed into the patrol car? Is that when the slamming occurred?
So he was driving. So what they are saying is that there was some kind of van blocking or whatever. He stopped abruptly at the stop sign. And so that made me hit the glass forward.
So it wasn't while you were getting into the car, it was
No, it was on the way that he slammed me. Yeah, he hit the brakes for no reason, because there was no reason for that, in my opinion.
Thank you.
No problem.
Did you have a seatbelt on at all?
No, I did not want him to put my seatbelt on because he made me uncomfortable. And for him to put my seatbelt on, it would require him to be this close to me and then also reach over me. So I was like, no, like, just be careful, you know? And that's the other thing. Like, whether or not his intentions were what they were, I can't attest to his intentions. I know, based on the history that he has, that possibly there was a bad intention there. But the fact is that when police officers are taking people, transporting people, they should be more careful with how they are driving so that this does not happen to anybody else.
Were you houseless at that time?
No, sir. I was bringing food to the camp.
Ms. Babcock, thank you so much for the information you provided to the board. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate
Thank you for hearing this.
Does the board need a break at this point, or can we proceed?
I have, I don't know if you guys want them, but I have here with all the information for the record.
Thank you. Thank you.
It has my presentation, the videos. It has an essay that I wrote about the OI report, comparing it to Upper C, and it has a history of all the things that exacerbated the situation at the tent city. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Apparently, the board would like to continue with the hearing. So next, we will hear from the Office of Professional Standards.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chuck Mason. I'm the inspector with the Office of Professional Standards at Kalamazoo Public Safety. The following is my office's presentation on PCR 22-0030. I wanted to start by providing a little bit of context to why public safety was at the site to begin with. So this case involves an incident, as we heard, that occurred at 433 Ampersea on October 7th, 2021. This is a vacant lot that up until October 6th of that year had been used for several months as an encampment by houseless persons. Many years ago, the property was used as a fly ash disposal site by a former coal-fired power plant, fly ash contains different types of trace chemicals which are hazardous to humans. Consequently, in 2012, the site was declared a brownfield due to ground contamination. The image in this slide shows the site, just for orientation purposes, bordered by the Kalamazoo River to the west, Hotop Avenue to the north, and Ampersea to the east. On September 15th, 2021, residents of the Ampersea encampment were notified that the site would be closed on September 29th. Signs were placed around the site, and the city issued a news release, which many local news organizations covered. After the announcement was made, there were two very visible protests held outside City Hall. The signs placed around the site read as follows: "Attention, please be advised that the Ampersea encampment will be closing on September 29th, 2021 at 5 p.m. This is private property, and anyone found here after this time will be considered trespassing and could be subject to prosecution. Any personal property remaining on the premises will be considered abandoned and will be properly disposed." A multi-agency effort to decommission the encampment commenced on October 6th, which included KDPS, Public Works, local public health agencies, and social service organizations. This followed weeks of visits to the site by the city and social service organizations in an attempt to provide resources for those who had to move from the site. From the time the site was signed until official action was taken to clear it, 21 days had elapsed. This slide simply includes a statement issued on the 27th of September of 2021 by the Kalamazoo Continuum of Care. The encampment, which has grown to 180 people, has become known in other unhoused communities as a place to go, with a growing number of inhabitants coming from outside Kalamazoo. Law enforcement and support workers report increased incidences of violence, drug use and sales, human trafficking, forced prostitution, and significant public health risks for those living there and for the surrounding community. Further, the encampment is located in a brownfield site, which is by definition unsafe and unhealthy for human habitation due to hazardous substances in the ground. The closing of the site was not an uncaring act. It is very easy to characterize it as such, but the decision to close it was in response to a very real threat that the site posed to its then residents and the citizens of this community. Not only were there significant environmental concerns, chemicals and trace elements in the ground, nightly open burning of trash, incidences of disease, and problems with human waste and trash disposal, but the site had seen a significant increase in violent crime and quality of life issues. The safety and security of the persons living at the site was constantly in jeopardy by the intractable conditions that plagued it. This brings us to October 7th, 2021, the day after the site was cleared. On that morning, public safety officers conducted a patrol there beginning first thing in the morning to prevent people from accessing the site. Excavating equipment had begun working on the site, and it was deemed unsafe for access. A police zone had been established around it, and the entire site had been secured by police tape running along an inner perimeter along or between already existing sections of chain link fence, and then an outer perimeter had also been established, giving two obvious layers that read police tape or police line do not cross. Just after 11 a.m., Joanna Babcock crossed the police line, the inner perimeter, contrary to PSO Miller's multiple lawful orders, and was taken into custody by PSO Miller after a short foot pursuit. PSO Miller performed a takedown to stop Ms. Babcock from fleeing. Ms. Babcock continued to resist, and two additional officers were required to successfully get her into custody. After her arrest, Ms. Babcock complained of a possible injury to her shoulder and was transported by PSO Matthew Grenate to Bronson Hospital for evaluation. Following her release, PSO Grenate transported her to the Kalamazoo County Jail, where she was lodged on charges of resisting and obstructing and trespassing. On May 16th of 2022, Ms. Babcock filed a complaint with public safety that contained 3 allegations against officers. Her complaint for the first allegation was that PSO Michael Miller used excessive force during her arrest. The second was that PSO Matthew Grenate intentionally slammed her in the back of the patrol car when they left the hospital. And the third was that PSO Matthew Grenate improperly changed Ms. Babcock's charges so that she could be lodged at the jail. This map shows an overview of the site as well as a progression of the initial foot pursuit that started this incident. Ms. Babcock entered the inner perimeter just southeast of PSO Miller's cruiser, which is at the top of the screen. He ordered her to stop and warned her if she did not, she would be arrested. She did not, and a foot pursuit began and ended approximately where you see that star, where she was taken into custody. In her complaint letter, Ms. Babcock alleged that PSO Miller used excessive force against her by tackling her, ignoring her statement that she could not breathe, and pulling up on her arm enough to cause pain in her shoulder and wrist. In his body-worn camera video, or PSO Miller's body-worn camera video, Ms. Babcock is observed ignoring his warning that she would be arrested if she did not come out of the taped-off area. Rather than leaving the scene, Ms. Babcock decided to run away from PSO Miller into the site, further ignoring his orders. Ms. Babcock then attempted to use her bullhorn to block PSO Miller's attempts to take her into custody. I'm now going to begin, this will be the arrest video. I'm going to stop it a couple times and just continue speaking. But this is the arrest video in its entirety. going to go ahead and back out of this presentation and then back into it to see if I can get the video to work. Audio? Or actually, that one actually may be my fault. Sorry.
You gotta get out, or I'm gonna arrest you. You gonna hurt someone? Don't fucking touch me! Don't fucking touch me! You're under arrest! Hey, look, he's violating my civil rights! 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 Help! I'm just trying to get something! I'm just trying to get something! Please listen!
Fleeing on foot from an officer is considered active resistance, a category of resistance defined by the Michigan Commission on Law Enforcement Standards. According to KDPS policy, active resistance is, quote, any action by a subject that attempts to prevent an officer from gaining control of the subject. There is an overt attempt to defeat the officer from gaining control. It is not an attack on the officer, but a physical act to prevent the officer from gaining control. Subjects actively resisting an officer can be very dangerous. They can suddenly escalate to active aggression as the officer escalates response techniques. The situation now becomes tense, uncertain, and rapidly evolving, and an appropriate, effective, and immediate response is required. That's end quote. An officer's response to a person's actions is examined through the lens of what is objectively reasonable, given the facts and circumstances confronting the officer at the time. A takedown is a trained-on technique. Officers use it because they anticipate that if a person is already fleeing on foot, then they will continue to resist and likely escalate. If the officer catches up to them and simply grabs a hold of them, likely escalate if the officer catches up and simply grabs a hold of them. A takedown brings the person fleeing to the ground, limiting injury potential and allowing the officer to regain the advantage to make an arrest. PSO Miller's takedown is proportional and appropriate to Ms. Babcock's level of resistance. Continuing, two officers arrive at this point. When I play the body camera video, you'll see them arrive to assist PSO Miller in handcuffing Ms. Babcock. At the moment Ms. Babcock yells that she cannot breathe, PSO Miller is still attempting to place a second handcuff on her wrist, and a second officer is assisting by holding onto her other arm. PSO Miller's knees are on the ground. He is straddling her legs. The officer to his left is kneeling next to him, but not on Ms. Babcock's body. Ms. Babcock's upper body is free and has no weight placed on it. Officers assist Ms. Babcock to her feet almost immediately after successfully handcuffing her, which was approximately 20 seconds after she made this remark. And the edit made to this video, when Ms. Babcock is set up, you can see that her chest is exposed. However, it was blurred out by our staff.
There's a baby flag in this. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Oh.
Knock it off.
Help! Please, you have to understand the situation. There's a baby's flag. That's all they have left. You'll have bulldozed everything. You guys bulldozed everything.
Okay,
Don't
lean
you
over this way.
understand?
Melinda, will you help out her shirt when you get a sec?
Pull on my shirt, please.
She will.
Please understand. Hey, excuse me. You're a woman.
Yes.
There's a baby's flag over there. That's all I have left.
Okay.
Understand? This is why I'm doing this.
Okay. But you have to understand that you guys have been given strict instructions. You can't come through, okay?
I know, but
So now
nobody's
you're-
listening
okay,
to us.
I understand.
Nobody's listening. Please listen to us. That's all they have left. Please. Please, that's all they have left. Please.
I don't know what's going on in my radio.
Please, that's all they have left. Hey,
Huh?
listen to me. You don't have a heart.
Dropping
Do you
what?
have a heart? Listen to me.
Yeah, I don't
Do
know.
you have
Yeah.
a heart? Hey, do you... Do you have a heart? Hey, do you have a heart? Tell me.
We're gonna go off this way.
Even after Ms. Babcock is placed into custody with both hands cuffed, she continues to resist officers by pulling away from them. You'll see here, in one moment, in this or next moment, in Officer Miller's body-worn camera, Ms. Babcock is seen pulling her body quickly away from PSO Miller as she tells him she does not want to go in the direction that he wants her to go. Another officer has to assist PSO Miller in walking Ms. Babcock out of the encampment because of another attempt to pull away from him. This continues once they reach the cruiser parking area.
I'm not going that way. I want to go this
Knock
way.
it off. Knock it off.
Fucking, yo, how do I have to deal with me? Hey,
Yeah, they got cars.
He's gonna fucking hurt me, please. Don't let him take me. Okay, he's gonna fucking hurt me.
No, we're not.
Let's search you over there so we can get out of view of these guys.
Hey, do you have a heart, please? There's a plaque. There's a baby's plaque in there. Okay. Can they get it, please? This is why I did this. Do you not have a heart? Please, I know what all your fucking law says, but this is important. This is important. Don't you understand? People have nothing. You don't fucking understand. I don't even want you to fucking touch me. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this shit. I can't believe this shit. You're all wrong. You guys are all wrong. This is all that people have left. This is all that people have left. Don't you know you've been working for the wrong side?
Watch your step, dear.
This whole fucking time, your bureaucracy doesn't let you see the truth. You're committing violence against people. You're committing violence against people. You're committing violence against people. Hey, you. How do you feel doing this job? You're black. How do you feel doing this job?
This one.
All right.
There's stuff all in there.
That's. I'm just gonna use your camera.
Okay, cool.
Please, please. They just want to get their.
What do you need?
Please.
I was just gonna have a cruiser come around
Please,
here. Use it for training.
Please, listen, can they get their plaque? Can they please get their plaque? Will you go over there and let them get their plaque? It's for their baby. That's all they have left. Don't you have kids?
Do you have ID on you, ma'am?
Haven't you ever lost a child?
Do you have ID on you?
Haven't you ever lost a child? Haven't you ever lost a child and all they have left is that? All they have left is a plaque. All they have left is a plaque. Don't you understand? Don't you understand that all they have left is a plaque? Huh? That's all they have left. Oh my God, I can't believe you have no heart. It's so unbelievable. What are you doing here? What are you doing here? What are you doing here?
I'll get 8A to come over.
What are you doing here? You're black. You shouldn't be working for this system. You should be working against this system. They have no heart. You too. You should be working against this system. You should be working against this system instead of don't. Oh, I'm gonna fucking pinch you if you do that shit. He's hurting my arm. He's hurting my arm. I'm gonna fucking pinch you if you hurt my arm. Bro, he's too tall. Look what he's doing to me. Look, he's hurting me. Hey, he's hurting. No, I'm not. I'm not resisting. He's too tall. He's hurting my arm. Hey, he's hurting my arm. He's too tall. And he keeps pushing me up. He keeps pushing me up to hurt me. He keeps hurting me.
Watch your head, dear.
Fucking let go of me. One day I'm gonna fight you with that uniform.
I don't know for sure, obviously.
Yes, I can.
And if it continues, I will ask that you be removed. Go ahead, sir.
PSO Miller's arm is observed appropriately restraining Ms. Babcock under her arm. This technique is used to guide an arrested person and to maintain control of them. Once in the parking area, Ms. Babcock pulls away from PSO Miller, requiring him to respond to her level of resistance to keep control of her. Again, Ms. Babcock is using active resistance against the officer, and an officer cannot use a constant level of response against someone who is escalating their resistance and expect to maintain control of them. They must scale their response appropriately. In this case, PSO Miller uses his strength and leverage to keep control of Ms. Babcock. If Ms. Babcock does not resist by pulling away, then the officer does not change his action. Ms. Babcock created the conditions to which the officer was forced to respond. The force Ms. Babcock claims PSO Miller exerts on her is proportional to her level of resistance against him and to prevent her attempts at pulling away from him. The Chief's office closed this allegation as exonerated, which means the officer's actions were lawful and within policy. To address her second allegation. In her complaint letter, Ms. Babcock wrote that PSO Grenade, quote, proceeded to slam me in the patrol car, end quote, when they left Bronson Hospital. The incident Ms. Babcock is referring to occurred at the intersection of East Walnut Street and Jasper Street, where PSO Grenade had to brake his vehicle to avoid running a stop sign. Ms. Babcock's allegation is that PSO Grenade's act was intentional. In reviewing PSO Grenade's body-worn camera as well as his cruiser's camera, a large moving truck is parked on East Walnut Street close to the Jasper Street intersection. The truck blocks the view of the stop sign from East Walnut Street traffic. PSO Grenade is not able to see the stop sign until the last moment prior to entering the intersection. He slams on his brakes to prevent a crash as there is a white panel van on Jasper Street that is entering the intersection. His surprise is evident in the quick application of his brakes. PSO Grenade then asks Ms. Babcock, explains to Ms. Babcock that the truck was blocking his view and asks twice if she's okay. She says that she is. This is PSO Grenade's dash camera video of the incident.
Oh shit.
You okay?
I guess you should have buckled me.
You all right?
I'm okay.
Ms. Babcock alleged that PSO Grenade did this braking action intentionally because of his annoyance with her. In the 3+ hours that PSO Grenade spent with Ms. Babcock at Bronson, and I reviewed the entirety of his video, which in total was almost 4 hours, she repeatedly attempted to antagonize and goad him by insulting him in his job and tried to pry at what she believed were his values, or perceived as his values. PSO Grenade acted with the utmost professionalism. He sat in silence and allowed Ms. Babcock to talk without almost any interruption. She also claimed that PSO Grenade harassed her during this and it made her feel uncomfortable. The next clip shows a body-worn camera of the interaction in which PSO Grenade made her feel uncomfortable and during which she noticed that he was annoyed.
I'm gonna buckle you in.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's the entirety of the interaction between them prior to them driving to the hospital and beginning the dash camera video that you just saw. So again, PSO Grenade acted professionally and compassionately, and Ms. Babcock at that time made no concerns to PSO Grenade, and he would have no reason to believe that she was concerned. Professional standards determined that PSO Grenade acted appropriately when he recognized a hazard to prevent a crash. Now, it should be noted that the department addressed the fact that Ms. Babcock was not seatbelted with the officer. Even though he asked her if she wished to be belted 3 times in total in that ride, and she said no, our policy still requires that the person in the back seat be belted with some limited circumstances. A misconduct other finding was made on PSO Grenade because of this. Concerning Ms. Babcock's allegation, the Chief's Office agreed with professional standards and closed this allegation as unfounded, which means that the act alleged did not occur. And just to refresh your memory, the misconduct other is a finding that it's a job performance issue that was not alleged in the original complaint. Now, the third and final allegation that Ms. Babcock made. In her complaint letter, Ms. Babcock wrote that PSO Grenade trumped up her charges so that she would have to remain in jail. Ms. Babcock was arrested on scene for resisting and obstructing. Resisting and obstructing and trespassing. According to the Kalamazoo County Jail Arrest and Incarceration Protocol issued on October 6, 2021, resisting and obstructing is listed as a crime of violence for which the jail would accept arrest. The intake deputy appears to be unfamiliar with the specifics of the protocol. They change weekly, and the newest one was only released a day prior. This was common in the kind of pandemic period. PSO Grenade tells her that Ms. Babcock's lodging was cleared through a command officer. By my own experience as a command officer on the street during the pandemic, I know it was common for our dispatch or for command officer themselves to confirm with the jail staff prior to the officer transporting someone to jail, issued protocol notwithstanding, to ensure that the jail would accept a certain arrest. And this is likely to what PSO Grenade was referring. I must also note here that the Kalamazoo County Jail is a separate entity from the Department of Public Safety, the jail being part of the Sheriff's Department, the Department of the County, and KDPS being a department of the city. Kalamazoo Public Safety, along with all other agencies who lodge persons at the county jail, are subject to the policies of the jail and any restrictions they put in place. If the sheriff decided to issue a new protocol tomorrow stating that the jail would not accept an arrest for a certain charge, then the county's law enforcement agencies, Kalamazoo Public Safety included, would have to follow it. So Ms. Babcock was arrested for resisting and obstructing and trespassing, and the following are the elements for each crime. For resisting and obstructing, which is found in the MCL 750.81D1, the elements read that the person did resist, obstruct, oppose, or endanger an officer that the defendant knew or had reason to know was performing his or her duties. PSO Miller was in uniform in a marked police car and part of a group of several officers around the site. He was perfectly identifiable to Ms. Babcock as an officer. For trespass, MCL 750.552, the elements read that the person did enter the lands or premises of the owner, lessee, or agent, and in this case the city of Kalamazoo, with the officers were agents, without lawful authority and having been forbidden to do so by the person who is the agent of said lands or premises. PSO Miller, as a uniformed public safety officer, was the agent designated with the authority to make decisions who could access the land, and he forbade Ms. Babcock from doing so. As Ms. Babcock was properly arrested for resisting and obstructing, and the updated jail incarceration protocol the day prior to this incident includes resisting and obstructing on the list of charges for which the jail would accept arrests, the chief's office closed this allegation as unfounded, which means that the alleged act, the intentional and malicious changing of charges, did not occur. I just wanted to kind of make a note on the process of getting a charge. So getting a criminal charge is the first step in the criminal legal system, and it's generally triggered by an encounter with law enforcement. LEOs, law enforcement officers, use a standard known as probable cause to make an arrest. Probable cause can be defined as a reasonable enough ground supported by facts and circumstances to justify a prudent and cautious belief that certain facts are true. A person is lodged at the jail on the strength of probable cause. Then enters the prosecutor or the city attorney. They are responsible for everything that comes after the arrest up to the point of conviction or case dismissal. These officers do not have to follow the specific charges upon which a person was booked into the jail, and they have a whole host of additional factors to consider with making a charging decision. These factors could be social, political, based on an existing caseload, or an evaluation of a person's history. So again, everything after the arrest occurs independently of officers' decision-making. Specific information about what happened in this case would have to come from the prosecutor's office or city attorney, as that is outside the realm of the Office of Professional Standards. So our job is to determine whether officers' actions were within policy and lawful. Now, I want to address a comment lastly here that Ms. Babcock made in her appeal letter, which was that she was treated differently than the white male who was also arrested at the site. And it is true that she was treated differently, but it had nothing to do with race or ethnicity and everything to do with her behavior. The other person stopped when ordered and did not fight with officers. And you'll see in the video it is true, one of the officers has to have him, or gives him multiple orders to put his hands behind his back several times. But in that officer's discretion. It did not escalate to a point of need to make an arrest for resisting and obstructing. So he was subsequently arrested or taken into custody for trespassing only, and he was cited and then released from custody. And the reason that he was released is that his actions and the subsequent charge did not meet the threshold for him to be lodged at the county jail. Without resisting and obstructing, simply trespassing only was not a charge by itself that would have met the county's threshold. And that would have been the outcome for Ms. Babcock had she followed the orders PSO Miller gave her at the outset of this incident. I'll now play a video from the arresting officer of the other subject.
5-1 City, we've got 2 now that have crossed the line. You're under arrest. You're under arrest. Put your hands behind your back. You are under arrest. Put your hands behind your back. You are under arrest. Put your hands behind your back. You are under arrest.
Let her go!
Yeah, I'm good.
Go! Let her go!
Can you guys go address her, please?
Does anyone have any questions?
Hello? Are there any board member questions, please?
Yes, so she wasn't charged with resisting or obstructing.
The second subject?
She wasn't charged, right? There was no charges?
She was charged, yes. She was lodged on charges, so the officers charged her initially with resisting and obstructing and trespassing.
So in the end, she just got charged for trespass?
I don't know what happened with the outcome of the case. So Ms. Babcock's charges when arrested and lodged were both resisting, obstructing, and trespassing.
Oh, okay.
Was it the person who was handcuffed, the white guy who was yelling, "Let her go"?
I believe it was.
Is it customary for a citizen to be in custody and restrained from movement to be allowed to smoke a cigarette?
Yes, I'd say it's very custom. I've done it many times. It probably happens multiple times a shift.
Are there any better views of the video?
Of Ms. Babcock's arrest?
Yes. Like
No,
where she's complaining about knees being on her. From what I saw, I couldn't tell if they were or were not on her back.
So Officer Miller's video was the best one that I could find. I'm going to head back and see if I can bring up a specific angle.
You gotta get out, or I'm gonna arrest you.
You have to understand the situation.
I think that's the best angle I have there of the officer on his right and then the officer to Officer Miller's left, and you can see his left knee, which up here, and then Miss Babcock's back, which is free.
Do you have a video of her running?
Yes, sir.
I didn't see the video of her running.
Yeah, I can go back.
I saw the police officer running after her, but I could not tell that she was running.
You gotta get out, or I'm gonna arrest you. You gonna hurt someone?
Don't fucking touch me!
You're under arrest!
Hey, look, he's violating my civil rights! He's violating my civil rights!
You need to play it again. Okay.
No, I still can't see
right.
see it. I mean, it happens so fast.
It does happen.
No, I still can't see it right.
Yep.
You gotta get out, or I'm gonna arrest you.
You gonna hurt someone? Don't fucking touch me! Don't fucking touch me!
You're under arrest.
Hey, look, he's violating my civil rights!
You gotta get out, or I'm gonna arrest you.
You gonna hurt someone? Don't fucking touch me! Don't fucking touch me!
You're under arrest.
Hey, look, he's...
Now, that is a drawback of a body-worn camera. You know, they don't provide the 100% perfect image of an incident. You know, that's an officer's eyes running, you know, towards something will be stabilized. And the body-worn camera, unfortunately, is jumping all around just like the uniform shirt is. But we have to rely on, in this case, what we can see in the camera and then the officer's own observations.
I have one more question.
Yes, Mr. Gardner.
Is there any way you could have just let her go get the memorial?
What happened prior to it was outside the scope of this investigation. You know, as far as what transpired earlier that morning or the day before, you know, it's really outside of this particular case, so I can't provide a direct answer to that.
Your report, and in your report, you indicate that Officer Gannett and Ms. Babcock spent some time together at Bronson Hospital.
That's correct.
And they interacted. And in your report, you indicate that Ms. Babcock insulted PSO Garnett's values. That's written in the report.
That's correct.
And so there was a value judgment made somewhere along the line there.
You mean in my own writing or her or hers?
Whoever wrote that she insulted his values,
Sure.
There's a judgment there someplace. And so my question is, when Ms. Babcock made the statements about her values and beliefs, that she was being mistreated because of racism by individual police officers. My question is, how did you arrive at the value statement for Officer Gannon when Ms. Babcock took us all the way back to the indigenous peoples, her values associated with that and how people of color have been treated since that time? So my question to you is, can you explain how this statement got into this report?
Yes, absolutely. I appreciate your point very much, and simply say that this statement was probably my own feeling of, you know, since I did not ask Officer Gannett specifically about that, I suppose that that particular line was an error in my own assumption over how I felt about the things that she said.
That's interesting.
I guess I construed them as insults on their face.
You said that you didn't ask Officer Gannett about that. But did you in fact interview any of the officers involved?
I did not.
You did not. So you could not have asked Officer Gannett about that, as you just stated.
That's correct.
Officer Gannett turned off his camera, and that was characterized as a mistake, correct?
Yes.
That was outside of protocol. Officer Gannett failed to put a seatbelt on a citizen who was in custody and under his care. and was consequently slammed into that shield in the back. Ms. Babcock felt in his presence that she was unsafe as a female. With all of that information hanging out there, the Office of Professional Standards made the decision not to interview not only Officer Gannett, but not interview anybody. Can you expound on that?
I believe that the specifics of Ms. Babcock's allegations could be answered with the available evidence to us. That is the body-worn camera video, the officer's reports.
Is it true that if a citizen tensed their muscles when they're handcuffed behind their back, that can escalate a charge to an R&O?
It could potentially, yes.
I want to be very clear about this. If you handcuffed me behind my back and I tensed up as a result of that, could the officer then charge me with resisting and obstructing?
It is potential. I'd say it depends on the circumstances.
I'm looking for a yes or no.
Yes, they could.
Thank you.
I have a question about the period of time that the officer sat with Ms. Babcock while she was being observed or waiting to be observed at the hospital. At that time, he turned off his body camera, is that correct?
That's correct.
So then we really don't know what Ms. Babcock may or may not have said to him to insult him at that time, correct?
That's correct. If I remember correctly, actually, I'm conflating it with something else. But yes, that's correct. During those periods, we would not know.
Any other questions from the board?
Yes. Do we have anything clear and concise that you can recall that Ms. Babcock did to insult the officer's values? Or give you the perception that she insulted his values?
I'd have to go back and review the video again. Again, it was outside the scope of her complaint. I noted it in the report, but
It was outside, excuse me, I'm sorry. It was outside of her scope of complaint, but it was included in the report.
yeah. So I included it in there as a way to essentially underlie. She built up the idea that he was annoyed with her, or that basically that slamming of the cruiser was because of the way he may have felt about her.
But would
and
you-
acknowledging that, I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's okay, go ahead.
Acknowledging that I did not interview him, so there's a couple of logical jumps that I had to make there as the investigator without his exact information. So I included in there to show that even during these times, which I perceived were insulting comments, that PSO Grenade maintained his professionalism with her, and in the entirety of the time leading up to the moment where the braking action occurred at the intersection.
You said that the statement was outside the scope of the report or the incident, the complaint, outside the scope, right? Correct?
I did say that, yes.
You did say that, right? But at the same time, you reported it.
That's correct.
That's correct. So that's incongruent, is it not?
I guess the reason for recording it was, like I just said, to underlie or kind of build a foundation, but the specifics of the complaint, the specifics of those, I did not consider, I guess, at the time to write them down specifically, because essentially I was making, trying to build the information, broad information, to show his behavior as it progressed through their interaction.
Yeah. The counter to that is that Ms. Babcock was calling some behavior into question. And the fact that the value statement was outside of the scope of the investigation, but included in the report, tilts that scale away from, it's just incongruent in my way. So thank you. Any other questions, please?
Just to be clear that, as he said, police officers don't actually issue the charges, it's the prosecutor.
That's correct. Officers will lodge on, if someone's going to be jailed, they'll lodge on charges of, they're based on probable cause. Cases are then reviewed by either the prosecutor's office or the city attorney, depending on what the charge is, and then they will actually do an official charging.
And the officers don't make a recommendation, do they?
The report is essentially the recommendation, the officer's report.
Okay.
Was she released the same day?
I'm not aware of that. That would be the Kalamazoo.
Any other questions by the board?
Well, I find it interesting that supposedly Miss Babcock made some statements, and while she was being cared for at the hospital, the police officer was sitting outside the door, and there wasn't much of a, as I recall, there wasn't much of an exchange between the two. That's interesting. I guess I don't have a question, though. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Inspector, thank you so much for
Absolutely. I appreciate
the input and for the information. We certainly appreciate it. At this time, the hearing is closed, and I would like for the public to remain seated while the board exits and goes into a deliberation room. Thank you so much. We are adjourned.